Hi everyone. So I decided to go live now just because I wanted to get this done so that I can get back to work. I got some work that I gotta do here in a little bit. So I'm just trying to finish that up. Basically I go live now. Snowball's looking at me like, what the heck, no? Um anyways, let me go to my channel. Okay. Alright, so now I'm live. Yay! Okay. And then co-host in the background is coming, so we'll have her here in a little bit. Okay. So, anyways, thank you for joining me. I just want, hey, come here. Mm. Oh. Looks like we might have a problem with Snowball. I'm gonna have to put him in his kennel again. He just attacked my arm. Anyways, I co-host in the background. Um, so thank you for being here. I know I only have one usually that's live, but that's okay. That's all good. It's all good in the hood. Um, so replay crew, love you. I hope to hear your feedback in the comments down below. Please do not forget to do the YouTube things, like, subscribe, share, turn the bell notification on. And also remember that we have the We're Not Done Yet podcast link below and the CV Circle channel link below. And I do have an update about my linking the We're Not Done Yet podcast. I left a comment on the post that donnamills made on Instagram, and then Michelle really liked it, and then she left a comment and she hearted it. So they are seeing my comments and they love them. Because there's a couple of other comments that I made that Michelle Lee has hearted, so I know that she does see them. So they do know that I am making their podcast, so that's good to know. That makes me happy. Smile, yay. But that's not why I do it. I link their podcast just in case people come to find my channel and then they don't know that those three wonderful ladies have a podcast of their own. So I just kind of want to make sure that I get the word out there and that they can get all the views and numbers that they want to get that maybe I can send over their way. So that's why I do it, and then I also just let them know on Instagram, or I'll leave them comments on Instagram. So with that being said, I just want to say I hope that Miss Van Ark feels better soon. Because we do miss her on that podcast. So and yeah, so that makes me excited that I got a little heart from Miss Michelle Lee the other day, or yesterday. That made me smile. Okay, so today we're going to do only two episodes because there's a lot to unpack in the second episode. Because the one that I was referring to with Michael, that is in that episode coming up in the second episode. So go ahead. We're going to go ahead and jump right in with episode 7. And this is called Breach of Things. So this is basically where Gary cheats and Richard cheats more. So this is the first episode that we see that Gary actually cheats. And then also this is going to start to tie in a little bit more about the auto part, stolen auto parts. So we'll see that come into play here in a little bit. So we're at the knotslanding Motors with Gary and Judy talking about Earl, saying that she's having a hard time with him even when he is sober because they're still fighting. So with that aspect, at that point, if he's still sober and they're fighting, then I think it's time for her to leave. And that's what Gary said too, if you're not happy, then it's time for you to leave. Um, And then Abby arrives looking for Sid and is introduced to Judy. And we kind of see after Judy is introduced to her, Abby's walking away looking at her like, what is this all about? And then we see that Ginger arrives at the OBGYN and sees Val there. And then Val is there for a checkup because I guess her and Gary are having a hard time getting pregnant. So she just wants to make sure that everything is okay with with everything. And Ginger is there because, she's unsure of what's going on. Um, However, she's unsure if she's pregnant and how she feels about it if she is pregnant. Um, because she was trying to have a baby with Kenny before their separation. So now she's unsure of that. And so again, Val is trying to have a baby, but it's not working. And then as Val goes in to see the doctor, Ginger encourages her to keep trying. Next, we see that Richard um, arrives home and Karen is blocking him. And while she's trying to bring in food and groceries, I guess they're gonna have a party for Laura later in the episode. And Karen asks Richard for help to carry in the groceries, and then Richard makes a joke. And then we see that Val is going through the paperwork as Gary comes in, and they're talking about trying to have a baby. And then Val asks Gary, and I'm not going to say exactly how it's going to get done. You can go back and watch the episode. I just don't want to get dinged. And then Val asks Gary to help set up for the party, and Gary says, sure. And then the phone rings, Judy calls regarding Earl, and then saying that, she's unsure where he's at. However, Gary says, well, there's nothing that he can do right now, and to call him when, he does get drunk, or if he does get drunk, and then she'll go out and help him. And Val is upset about Earl, and Gary goes upstairs to change. Then we are at the party. And then Ginger was supposed to go out to a play with Carl. However, he arrived at Ginger's door, and he told her, well, the play is actually next week. And then they decide to go to Laura's party. Richard tries to hit on Abby during the whole party. Val tells Ginger that Kenny is coming because Val told Karen about the play, and so they all invited Kenny over. And she goes, well, it had to happen sometime. And then we see that Judy calls Gary, and Gary goes to help. Ginger tells Carl that Kenny is coming, and then we see that Judy and Gary find Earl's car, but they don't find Earl, so they're just waiting outside for him and talking. And then we see that Abby is pouring drinks, and Richard hits on her. Karen sees and calls Richard over, and Karen is not happy about this. Sid asks Abby to cool it. Karen yells at him and asks him to keep his hands to himself, and that this is a night to celebrate Laura and not to, mess it up. And then we see that Laura is not happy because Laura is starting to recognize what's really going on with Abby during this whole party. Then we see that Kenny arrives and sees Ginger with Carl. Carl goes over to introduce Kenny. Karen comes back out of the kitchen, sees Karen sees Kenny and Carl talking, and then she shakes her head and is like, "Oh boy." And then it's almost like the parties on Friends that Monica tries to host, or the parties that Mary Richards tried to do on the Mary Tyler Moore show. It's just kind of like whatever can go wrong goes wrong at this party. And you can kind of see how Karen is taking it, because even though it's at the Avery's house, she's the one that's really throwing the party, to give Laura, to celebrate Laura. So I just wrote that down, saying that it's like the friends parties, or it's like when Mary Richard had a party at her apartment on the Maritime Memorial. So I thought that was funny. Um, and it says where everything just goes wrong. And then we see that Gary and Judy are still outside talking. Judy is trying to hit on him as Earl comes up, and we see that Earl is drunk. And then Earl and Judy starts to fight. Earl hits Judy and drives off. Judy tells Gary not to go after him. And then we see that Sid and Karen are talking about, Sid and Kenny are talking about his artist that he finds. Ginger and Carl are playing ping pong. And Kenny leaves. Karen is not happy. Abby tells Richard to cool it. And then the stakes are burnt. Gary brings Judy home to her house and tries to put ice on it to help with the bruise. And Judy asks him not to leave. He then calls Val over at Laura's, and Gary lies about where he is. And then I just put in this part, this is where he cheats on Val, and Val tells him she loves him. And then we see that the party is stalled, and Val proposes a toast that goes all wrong, thanks to Laura. I'm sorry, thanks to Richard and his drunkenness. Abby is not happy about the way that Richard is acting and actually cheers to Laura. However, Laura is still kind of like unsure about Abby. Um, Abby and Richard talk. Oh, Sid and Karen talk about Abby and Richard, and Laura overhears Abby and Richard talking. Val sees it and is uncomfortable. Oh, Abby and Richard tries to kiss Abby, and Val sees it and it makes her uncomfortable. Ginger and Carl are back at her house. Val sees Laura crying and asks if she is okay, and Val tells Laura to go upstairs and get some rest and that Val will clean up. Laura asks if Val wanted to stay until Gary gets home, and Val says no, I'll be alright. And then as Laura goes upstairs, we see that Val is about to cry, because it's almost like Val and Laura are in the same situation, only Val doesn't really know. Next we see Gary and Julie are still trying to take care of her bruise. Ginger and Carl are trying to make out, but it's just uncomfortable because at one time it was Ginger and Kenny's house. And he asked Ginger to go away for the weekend. Ginger said yes. And then we see that Kenny is at Sylvie's, but he is not happy and does not want to be there. Val is still waiting up for Gary, and she thinks about calling him, and then she stops. Kenny shows up and asks about Carl, then they fight. It almost gets really difficult, but then Ginger tells him to leave and to leave his keys on the table. And then we see that Gary is shot Judy and phone rings. However, they don't answer it, and this is the first of many times that Gary cheats, and not just on Val, but also on Abby, or I think pretty much any woman that he's with who tends to cheat on. Then it's the next morning, Gary arrives home, and Val is waiting up for him. Gary says that they found Earl, and he is at home sleeping it off. Val apologizes, and Gary tells Val that he wants to spend more time with her. He feels guilty, but Val doesn't know why. However, Gary does, and then they go upstairs. Laura is up, and Richard asks for coffee, and Laura tells him that it's on the counter. And then Laura asks about what happened last night and how she was feeling. And Richard said that he doesn't remember anything because he was drunk. And then Laura said, well, it's amazing how when someone is drunk, they just complete act like they're a completely different person. And then she tells Richard that, it's gotten to the point to where I dread coming home, and she threatens that, there may be a time where she never comes home. And then we see that Ginger is getting ready, and her phone rings. It's the doctor, and that's when she finds out that she is pregnant, and she is unsure if she should tell Carl. Carl comes over to pick her up. Ginger tells Carl what's going on. However, she tells him also that she feels funny about going away for the weekend, and that she just wants to be by herself because she is pregnant with Kenny's child after all. So she just doesn't want to go because it feels wrong, and she wants to be alone. Carl, I think this is really sweet. Carl does tell Ginger that he will be there for her, and that, no matter what. Um, Val comes in. Oh, Val comes in with food for breakfast and then for Gary. However, he is getting ready for work, and Val thinks that there is something wrong. Gary tries to reassure her, and Val is very trusting. Val is saying that, you know, there's something that you're not telling me, and I'm not sure what it is. And he goes, no, there's nothing there. And then they both, and then we see that Judy comes to the dealership when Gary is there, and then they talk about doing the right thing. However, they both decided they want to see each other again, and that Gary will call her. So that's pretty much episode 7. I think that this is another straightforward episode. This is one of few episodes where all the couples are together. However, we don't see a lot of Sid or Karen and Sid together. We don't see a lot of, we see a lot of Richard and Laura together. We see hold on. Oh, we see a lot of Kenny and Ginger and Carl, and we see a lot of, we see a little bit of Gary and Val, but that's more about, when he decides to come home. So I think that there's just not a lot there on this episode. I think that, with the couples, Gary is trying to deal with Val, and now Judy and Earl, and now we'll talk a little bit more about the auto parts in the next episode. So they're doing a lot more with that. And then Sid and Karen are just at the party together, so we're not really seeing a lot of that. Ginger and Kenny are just fighting. I think that, with the baby coming, Ginger has a lot to think about, and I think that she's really trying to decide if she wants to make her marriage work or if she wants to raise the baby on her own. Because there's no doubt about it that she wants the baby. It's just a matter of how she's going to raise the baby. So again, this episode is pretty much self-explanatory. I think that Laura and Richard need to break up. However, it's just going to be an ongoing back and forth. And I think Laura should have left Richard a long time ago. But that's just my opinion. And now that we see that the culmination of Abby and Richard is coming together, and I think that we're starting to see Abby come out of her shell a little bit more and really show her true colors a little bit. I think is what's gonna come off in this season, these last couple of episodes. Because I think there's 18 episodes, so after episode 8, we'll have 10 more. So we're getting through them pretty quickly like we did last time. with season 1. So I'm gonna go ahead and play the scenes from. This will be 2 different scenes from episode 7, just to kind of give an idea of what's really going on with Richard and Abby. So here we go. And this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. Let me go back to it. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. Oh, and then before this, I can kind of see like the setup is Richard is trying to get with Abby. Abby doesn't want it. Then we see Karen and Sid kind of glance over at one another. And this is where this scene comes from. So, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
Richard, watch. Oh, I love your voice. Jen. Richard. Come on, just give me one short, wet kiss and I'll leave.
Richard!
What?
Could you leave the steaks for a minute and give me a hand in the kitchen?
Karen, I'm busy.
So there again, it's like, Karen is giving Sid a look, and then she keeps seeing Richard try to make a move for Abby, and then she looks at Sid, gives him a look like, you need to control your sister, but Sid will make a good point. And the next scene I'm gonna play. So, and again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. And the thing that I like about Karen and Richard's relationship is no matter what, Karen can tell Richard how it is, and their friendship is still, what it is, like what it ends up to be. Like there's a unconditional love there, no matter what. Um, but I think that Karen does get frustrated with him quite a bit. So that's just my opinion. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube fair use policy. Oh, hold please. Hold please. Sorry about that. I had to take that phone call. It was about getting statements sent out for patients for providers. So, so I do apologize about that. Thank you for bearing with me. Let me just check. I want to check something real quick. Do, 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 do. Back. Okay. So, and again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. This is where Richard is calling, or where Karen is calling Richard into the kitchen, and Sid is needing to, talk to Abby about what's going on. So, and again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. Alright, here we go.
I need a hand in the kitchen.
Richard, go ahead. I'll take care of this.
Hi, sis.
Hi.
How you doing?
Okay.
Yeah. Could you sort of cool it with Richard a little bit?
Me? Oh, for God's sake. He's an octopus. He's got his hands all over me before I can do anything.
I know. It's not your fault at all, but do what you can, okay? So, Karen.
I find that funny because, however, Richard and Abby already cheated. So, therefore, I think that when Abby let Richard make the first move, it was on Abby because she was leading him on. So, that's just my opinion. Richard is gonna Richard, but again, this is also part of Abby's fault, but he's just making it so obvious. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
What can I do for you?
Richard, you're making a complete ass of yourself.
My forte.
Well, why don't you try something else for tonight, okay?
Just can't stand to see anyone having fun, can you, Karen? Unless, of course, you're the social director.
This night is for Laura, Richard. I'm not going to let you spoil it. Why don't you try keeping your hands to yourself?
Karen, when I decide to put my hands on you, which, believe me, is something I'm not even remotely planning to do, then complain. Until then, get off my back. Great party, huh, darling?
So I think Richard and Karen had like a brother-sister relationship. I just think that, they can just fight and then it'll be okay after a while. But, this is, Richard is looking out for, Karen's looking out for Laura and Laura best interest. And then also, I think Karen's also looking out for Abby too. Because, she doesn't want Abby to get into a messy situation. But that's just my opinion. So, and again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. This is when Sid and Karen leave the party. So let's just go ahead and play this.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Where's Abby?
I can't believe those two.
I don't know how Laura put up with it.
Richard has more arms than an octopus. That's Richard. He used to grab Ginger like that all the time.
Yeah,
too.
but she didn't like it. Ginger's not Abby.
Karen.
Well, it's true. Richard may be grabbing, but Abby's a receptive grabbee. Who knows? She's probably already grabbing back.
All right, so what if she is? What am I supposed to do about it?
Talk to her. She's your sister.
She is also a grown woman.
Who happens to be seducing one of our neighbors, who happens to be the husband of one of our best friends.
Yeah. Maybe it's just an innocent flirtation.
It's a lot less than innocent, Sid. A lot more than a flirtation.
I think michelelee came in, her voice changed at that moment because she just couldn't stop herself from laughing. Fun fact, I can say this because I know that it was known, or it is known throughout the interviews, and they're great friends now. But when donnamills did come onto the show, there was a little bit of tension between Karen and between Michelle and Donna. So I think that little laughter was a little bit of Michelle coming out, and not Karen. That's just my opinion. I think she just couldn't help herself. Like, you know, just kind of doing Michelle there. So, and again, this is in accordance with YouTube series policy.
Come on, not.
Okay. And then, let's see if there's anything else. No, there's really nothing that I want to do there. Okay, oops. Oh. Okay.
So what do you think of Dr. Phillips?
Alright. So, that is episode 7. So I know I kind of ran through that one pretty quickly. I know it's a little bit short, shorter breakdown, but there's really not a lot of breakdown to do with that episode because of the fact that, you know, they were going back and forth and all the couples were together during this episode. So it was just a little bit of an easier breakdown. So I really didn't have much to say about that episode. Really, I think, although I am going to break down this next episode a little bit more, there is a lot more to talk about. And episode 8, which is called Scapegoats. So, with this episode, this is where we see a lot more interaction between the boys with the auto parts and Abby and Gary, and then Michael's situation. So, this will be a little bit more, I'll be able to have a little bit more feedback on this episode. So we see that, so I kind of wrote this down, like, just as a note to myself, and I'm going to think about this as we go on throughout the episodes. It says, here's where I think the storylines become more cohesive, and by that I mean it's where they kind of go from episode to episode to episode, instead of being more of a one-off. So this is where the auto part storyline comes together, which in turn comes season 3 storylines and then season 4 storylines. So this is how like everything will come together, and then also Michael's. This is a huge storyline for Michael, and you guys can see the picture on the screen. So, and again, I'm just gonna stop here. It's halfway through. Don't forget to do the YouTube things, like, share, subscribe, turn the bell notification on, and also don't forget I have the We're Not Done Yet podcast link below, and also the CG Circle channel link below, where they not only do knotslanding, but they also cover a couple of other shows. I think one is Yellow Jackets, which I haven't seen. I'm trying to think of if there's any other ones that I'm not aware of. So go ahead and check them out. Those are the 2 most knotslanding channels that I've seen so far. So this is where I think, like I said, where the storylines become more cohesive. So then we are at the third gate. There is a lot. It's at nighttime. Everyone is in bed. There's a lot of noise going on downstairs. It wakes up Sid and Karen first. Sid says, I'll go check it out. Tells Karen to stay. She goes, absolutely, or she says, absolutely not. And so she gets up and follows him. And then they go downstairs, and then Eric and Diana follow them. They turn on the light, and they see Michael walking around in circles. And so, and then it's the next morning in their kitchen, and Eric tells Sid and Karen that he does this all the time. He gets up in the middle of the night and he walks around in circles. So it's not just him sleepwalking, it's the fact that Michael does get up and walk around at nighttime. And Eric goes, well, why didn't you say anything? And he goes, well, I just thought it was normal, whatever. And then we were at the knotslanding motors and talking about the parts with Sid and Gary. And then Linda comes in and tells Sid that there's a stress test result on his engine that he's working on. And then we're at Michael's school, and Michael is having a hard time in his art class, and he is like painting, and the way that he's painting is not a, I don't, it's not a very good painting. It's just very messy, and it's just very like doesn't look like anything. And then he goes over, tries to grab another color, spills paint on another student's work, and then they end up getting into a fight. And then we see that Laura comes, and then we're at the fair gates, and then Laura comes over and wants to talk to Karen, and she tells Karen that she is not okay and wants to talk about Richard and Abby. She wanted to talk about it, and because Laura's like, well, at first I just thought it was in my mind. I just thought that they were just trying to be funny about it, but now I think it's like really real about what's going on between them. And so Karen just wants Laura wants an objective view about it, and Karen starts to talk to her about it. However, the phone rings, and then Karen answers it, and she comes back and tells Laura that, they'll talk later, but that's just to go to the school right now. And then we see that we're back at knotslanding Motors. Abby is helping at the dealership. Gary tells Sid that he will handle the meeting with, I think one guy is in Roy, but I don't know what the other guy's name is. So, and then we're back, and again, this is back and forth, back and forth. Then we're at the school again, and then the principal tells Karen that Michael is suspended, and tells Karen that maybe he needs to go into a class with students who have issues with learning. And then Karen asks if she reviewed his records, and the principal says no, I haven't reviewed his records, and basically the principal blames Karen for what's going on with Michael. However, Michael is still suspended. And then they leave. And then we see that Gary is at lunch with the guys, and they are trying to help him with the money situation. They show him a list of auto parts, and they want $50,000 for all the parts. And then next we see that Sid and Karen are in the kitchen talking about Michael, and then they end up fighting about it. Now again, with Sid and Karen fighting, it's different than when Karen and Mac are fighting. It's a different vibe. I think they go match for match, and it's more or less because Mac knows what Karen is going to do before Karen does it, and same thing, Karen knows what Mac is going to do before Mac does it. However, with Sid, it's more of an older father type of thing where he just wants to handle everything at home. He doesn't want anybody to help from the outside. He just wants to keep it all inside. He wants to try and help Michael, at home as opposed to go to get help from a therapist or somewhere else like that. So they're just fighting about it, and then Sid blames Karen, and she tells him that Michael needs help. Next we see Sid, Gary, and Abby driving to the auto shop, and Sid and Gary are talking about the deal, and Sid doesn't want him to do it because he doesn't agree with how it looks. And then we're at the Avery's. Richard is listening to the radio, and Laura wants to talk, but they don't, and Laura leaves. And then we see that Michael is trying to put air in his basketball because Karen did tell Sid that, he needs to talk to him about what's going on. Michael tells Sid that he doesn't feel normal and he gets made fun of at school, which I can relate to Michael. Um, and then Sid talks to Michael about when he was in school, however, Michael didn't pay any attention. Abby goes to see Gary at the dealership on a Saturday. And then the guys come by to see Gary, and he tells them the news about Sid not wanting to be in with the deal. Abby goes into her office, turns on the microphone, and Abby listens in. The figures are at the beach with the Averys and Ginger and Carl and Olivia and Brian. And then we learn that Michael got into the picnic basket on the way up to the beach. However, Eric didn't stop him, and Karen asked why. And Eric goes, well, because I figured he got into a lot of trouble with me, so he didn't want to cause more problems. And then we see that Michael comes up to Karen, and he wants to eat. However, Karen says, no, it's not time to eat, plus you ate almost everything in the basket already. Um, and then Sid and kids go play volleyball, and then we see that Ginger and Carl are at the beach as well, talking about the pregnancy and the fact that she hasn't told Kenny yet. And then we see Michael go up to the Averys, and he wants the Averys to go play volleyball. And then we're at the dealership, we see that the boys are pushing Gary, and this is when Gary is learning about more and more about how the parts are stolen. And then we see that Val is playing volleyball along with everyone. And then we see that Sid tells Michael to stay in his area because he keeps on trying to, get the ball and jump up in front of everyone. And then eventually, I think Olivia gets hurt, and so then Sid wants Michael to get off the court. Michael runs off, and Sid runs after him. And Michael asks his dad, what's wrong with him? And Michael thinks that he's crazy. And then we see that Abby, I don't know if this is the next day or something, but Abby goes to see Gary in his office, gives him some papers that the auto park guys are looking for, and knows that they have a meeting. And we see that then we're at the psychiatrist's office, and we see that Michael can't sit still. He starts ripping out papers and magazines and books and throws them on the floor and just jumping all over the area. And the doctor does not know what is wrong with Michael. However, they do know that it's been about 6 months. He's been nervous and out of sorts. Karen and Sid say that they fight a lot, however, it's normal for them. Doctor says that he can't help them unless they want his help. And then we see that Michael is running around. Oh, and then we're back at the staircase. Michael is running around and is going, and Sid stops him, and Sid offers to take him to the shop the next day to help around the shop. And Michael is all excited, and then Karen and Sid fight about it. I also said Karen and Mac, but Karen and Sid, because there's a lot of fighting in this episode. And then next we see Sid and Michael arrive. Michael walks around and finds the engine, and Linda tells us about it. Then we see that Sid comes up with the overalls for him to put on so he can help. And then we see that Gary goes to see Abby, and she tells him about the meeting, and she is impressed with Gary and encourages him to talk to JR. And then we're seeing that Michael is not listening and is hungry. As Sid walks away, Michael makes a mess, and then he falls down and gets hurt. Sid takes him to the hospital while Linda calls Karen. And then they're at the hospital, and Karen brought along Carl, who is a pediatrician, but he's also Jason's pediatrician. they go to the waiting room, and then that's when Kyle comes back and says that they will keep him overnight and that he'll have results. Kyle asks to run a few tests on him, and they agree, and that he'll have the results the next day. Next, we see Gary and Val are at home, and the phone rings, and it's the boys, and Gary is unsure about what to do, and Val asks what's going on, and Gary yells at Val and says it's just work stuff, and he doesn't want to tell her what he's gotten himself into. Um, so then we're back at home at the tailgates. Karen tells Diane and Eric about Michael because, he's just been crazy and, he's just going to milk this, and Diane is just afraid that she's going to have to take care of him. However, when Karen explains what's really going on, then they kind of all say, okay, well, we'll help. And then we see that Gary and Abby pull up to the dealership, and the guys are there, and they grab Abby. Gary gets threatened and hurt, and he has until next week to come up with $50,000. And then Kyle comes over to see Karen instead, and that's when we learn, dun dun dun, Michael has ADHD. And it's a physical, it's not anything psychological, it's not anything that Sid or Karen has done, it's just something within the system. And Kyle says, with the symptoms are coming in a lot younger in Michael than what they normally do. And that's why there was no testing done on him. So they recommend, so he goes, I don't like medicine, and Sid and Karen both said that they don't want medicine, but, Kyle did say if all else fails, then he may have to be on medicine in order to help it. However, there is ways to relieve the symptoms, such as change your diet, run his energy out, and all this stuff. However, it's going to take a family effort, and it's going to be tough on the whole family. And Sid goes, well, we are a tough family, and we'll make sure that happens. And then we're at see Gary and Abby at the dealership. Abby tells Gary he has to get the money, and again is encouraging him to go talk to JR, who so happen will be in town in a couple of days. I only see Michael up in his room with Sid, and he has a new diet. And so he goes, this is all I get for dinner? And Sid is like, yeah, this is step one of the new diet. And then Michael apologizes about what happened. While Eric and Michael play cards, Karen and Sid goes to talk in the kitchen, and Karen tells Sid that this really scared her because they were blaming each other, but then also, in hindsight, it sounds like that they were blaming themselves. So Karen tells Sid how she felt about the whole situation. And again, this is when that's the end of the episode. So this is again during the 80s when ADHD wasn't that much known about. The knotslanding did a really good job with putting this in the episode and showing what it looks like when someone is diagnosed with it and how difficult it can be on the families. And I think that, we see that now too with people who are diagnosed with autism. And it's very similar. We're seeing a lot more kids and young adults and even older adults. I know a lot of older females that are getting diagnosed with autism. So I think that it's just going to be every generation has a new diagnosis that will come onto the scene. And I think in the 80s it was ADHD. So I think the way that knotslanding handled this was really great. So let's talk about the couples. We didn't really see Sid and Karen. Take that back. No, I meant to say we really didn't see Kenny and Ginger. We really didn't see Val and Gary in this episode, other than when he was at home getting the phone calls. We barely saw that on this episode too. We saw a little bit of Laura and Richard, but that's just when Laura wanted to talk to Richard, and then that was it. We saw a little bit more of Gary and Abby, and we can foresee where this relationship is gonna go. I think eventually, we'll see that Abby dumps Richard for Gary, and then that's gonna cause a whole nother issue. And so I think that the writers are starting to solidify that with Abby getting involved with the dealership and then also with the stolen auto parts. I think that's going to come into play. And then we'll see, we shall see, I think that's it. So we're sitting, so this is very Sid and Karen heavy, this episode, and how they dealt with, Michael's diagnosis, and really how the whole family's going to deal with it moving forward. So we'll see this kind of play out within the next couple of episodes, and I think throughout the rest of the season, because I think once season 3 hits, we don't really talk about we don't talk about Bruno. We don't really talk about Michael all that much in his diagnosis of ADHD. It's like once season 2 ends, it's almost like, okay, that storyline is done. Now we got this other storyline that we're going to focus on. So, and I think we'll see hints of it, but we'll see some excessive hints of it, but we're not going to see it like we do in this season. So that's with that. I mean, co-host in the background, do you have anything to add with the way that they handled the ADHD diagnosis with Michael? I think that, there's going to be a couple of scenes I play for this episode because I think that it's really telling on how this scene is played. So I'm actually going to go back a little bit. Let me see where I wanted to. Okay. I'm kind of going to go back to the car scene where Sid and Karen and Michael are all going to the doctor's office, and then we'll kind of play the scenes out from there. Yes, and I think that we saw that a lot more with this episode, and I think that once, because, and again, I don't know if Don Murray knew at this point that he was leaving, so therefore I think that they were trying to incorporate at least 6 kids in these episodes a lot more moving forward because of that fact, because then we'll get into the Abby storyline in the next couple of episodes as well with her kids. And that goes into season 3 as well. So I think that I'm wondering, since this is halfway through the season, if the writers and directors already knew that Don Murray wanted out of his contract, so they were going to finish the season, have him in a couple of episodes for season 3, and then just kind of let the storylines play on from there. That's just my opinion. So I think that they were just trying to find a good way to tie in the kids, just like what they did with Diana at the second episode that I did yesterday. And you notice, like, when Michael got hurt, he got hurt in the same spot that he did in the first season. So this poor kid got hurt in the same spot in his head 2 seasons in a row. And, this poor kid has taken a lot of beatings in the head. I'm surprised he's still standing, but that's just me. But yeah, I think that he knew that he was getting ready to leave, so they were just trying to build that in. And I think that they were also, yeah, Sid and Karen fought, but I think they're fighting more because I think they were starting to build up Karen's heart, Karen's personality to move forward, to let Dawn Murray leave, so to make her more of an even stronger character in these episodes. Because you even see it in the last episode that we did, she was like the main person, even though she really wasn't in that episode all that much. It was the fact that she was always there trying to help out in the way that she can. So I think that, these episodes, these last 10 episodes in the season, I think that they really played off these characters for that reason, because I think that Don Murray um did go to the directors and writers in mid-season and tell them that he wanted to leave. So, but that's just my opinion. I think they just wanted to show Karen's character a little bit more, make her a little bit more stronger to what she's going to be facing. And so that's kind of why I want to play, a couple of scenes from this episode just to kind of round it out. And this is the first time, because I did make note, and I want to say season 5, I did notice that Karen was wearing a tie. So this is the first time, you heard it here first, this is the first time in Knots Landing that we see Karen wearing a tie. And I think that may make a statement as well, if you really think about it, that, they're really starting to show Karen to be a lot more stronger and be more proactive in her life and to take on more responsibilities. And again, the fights, and co-hosts in the background, tell me if I'm wrong, the fights between Sid and Karen are way different than the fights between Sid and Nak, because there's always a payoff with Sid and Nak. You never get to see the payoff with Sid and Karen. So that's just my thing. Yeah, more independent. Like, she's becoming more independent, and I think we'll see that a lot more. And I think that that's why the fights are so different between Sid and Mac, because they are two very sorry, I had to deal with a cat. Sorry about that. But they are two very hot-headed people, Karen and Mac, and they toe to toe, head to head, about things that they are both interested in, but they're not like on the same side sometimes, or sometimes they are on the same side, but Mac had this law side that he had to follow the law, even though that he felt that Karen was right. He had to do what was right based on his job and following the law because he was a lawyer. And we'll see that in the very first episode of season 4. So I think that that's where it's a little bit different, because you'll see that the difference between Mac and Karen and Sid and Karen is like there's not a payoff. They're not fighting together for a common cause, really. They're fighting, Sid and Karen are fighting for their family in a different way, and they have different ideals, where Karen and Mac, when they're fighting for the same thing, but they may not be on the same side lawfully, but maybe they are morally. And we'll see that. And they'll even do that when they're in bed. Like they talk about it, they fight about it. And then, I have a lot of backstories on that, a lot of behind the scenes about their intimate scenes with Karen and Mac, and the way that they played those out. But you'll see them go at it, like while they're in bed, and, talking about things like, they bounce ideas off of each other, where the way that Karen and Sid fight, it's like it's either my way or the highway almost. So that's just my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that. Co-host in the background, that's just kind of like what I see now that I watch. Because before I watched season 4 and before I got introduced to Mac, I liked seasons 1, 2, and 3. But now that I have Mac in my mind, I just can't. Because I just like Karen being more independent. You know, that's just me. But any thoughts on that co-host in the background? I will go ahead and play this scene. This is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. And again, this goes for how too, because this is also a child or a preteen asking what's wrong with them. You know, like what's going on. I can't control anything. I tried to do the right thing, but I just can't. I just can't stop it. So, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
Really weird is the shrinks.
That's not true, honey. Eric's friend Steve, he's a psychologist, and he's not a weirdo.
Yeah, but Steve's 16. Tommy Franklin is one kid I know my age, and he goes to see a shrink, and he's definitely crazy. I'm feeling better, Mom, I am. I'll be good, I promise.
This isn't a punishment, honey. It's to help us understand what's bothering you.
What's bothering me is going to see a shrink. Dad says there's nothing wrong with me. Isn't that right, Dad?
Your mom thinks Dr. Phillips can help.
But I don't need help. I'm not anything like Tommy Franklin. And he's really crazy.
This really breaks my heart because he doesn't know what's wrong with him. He doesn't know that he needs the help. However, at this point, we don't know. We're not supposed to know what's going on with Michael. And, you know, I think that sometimes psychologists and psychiatrists can help, especially if there's co-occurring disorders. And again, this is in my wheelhouse. So if there's co-occurring disorders, then yes, going to a shrink or going to a doctor is best for a child or a preteen. I've had when I was working in the community mental health agency and I was working with the in-home program, I actually had young preteens and younger who had optional defiant disorders along with obsessive compulsive disorders, along with ADHD, along with autism. So there's like a whole spectrum, not to say autism spectrum, but there's a whole spectrum of disorders that can be co-occurring. Now, what we see in Michael, I don't see that. I see just the ADHD that maybe he has, but we don't know that at this point. And in the next scene, we'll hear Sid and Karen talk to the doctor about what's been going on in the house and maybe and how long Michael has been dealing with this. So, and again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
Do you think I'm crazy?
Of course not, son.
Then why do I have to go see this guy?
And I just want to point out that the whole time that Michael is talking about this and talking about how he's feeling, he's looking at Karen. He's not looking at his dad. Other than when he said, Dad says that there's nothing wrong with me. But he's looking at Karen, and Karen is just trying to say, oh, my heart. I can just see that, oh, my heart is just breaking for him, you know, because I want to do everything that I can to help my child and to give him what he needs in this moment. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. Okay, I'm going to jump to the next scene because this is Abby coming down the stairs. We don't really need to see that. Okay.
Dr. Ronald Phillips, Dr. Ronald Phillips, certificate of accomplishment.
Okay. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. And co-host in the background, if I say anything that you may not agree with, please let me know. Or if you want to add something, I would greatly appreciate it. Because this is something that needs to be talked about a lot more, and not just with, you know, because I see a lot of this being talked about in the YouTube and other YouTube communities, like other than Kwama. But the way that I want to do this is I want to talk about all this through TV shows and how we can look at this. So that's why I'm bringing knotslanding, because I feel as the very first show, because I feel that it does deal with a lot of social issues, and that's just my opinion. So, and again, this is in accordance with YouTube series policies. Okay, sorry, this is just kind of, and jumps right back into Michael after the Abby and Garrison. So this is in accordance with YouTube series policy. I told you guys that these scenes just jump around like crazy. This is in accordance with YouTube series policy.
Dr. Ronald Phillips, Dr. Ronald Phillips, certificate of accomplishment.
So you can hear Michael whipping out pages of magazines. He's crumbling them up and throwing them and like in the tree while Sid and Karen are inside talking to the doctor. So I'm kind of let this play out so that you can kind of hear it.
It's hard to say.
So there again, he's just trying to make a mess. He just can't control himself. And this is where we get to talk about what we see Karen and Sid with the doctor. This doctor looks familiar. I don't know who plays the doctor in this episode, but I like him. He seems nice. So this is an accordance with YouTube series policy.
He's worried and confused about what's happening to him.
What is happening to him, Doctor?
I don't know yet. I need to get to know Michael and both of you a little better. Tell me, has there been much stress in the family lately? Anything unusual?
Michael, he's been unusual.
He's been a little bit nervous lately, but frankly, I don't really see any problem.
Anything else?
Well, we were involved in accused of attempted rape.
I wanted to skip that cut because I'm trying to keep that word, the grateful word, out of my video. So that's kind of why I skipped over that little part where Sid was talking. So, and again, this is in accordance with YouTube series policy. This is where we see that Karen and Sid are kind of starting to blame each other about what's happening to him. So again, this is in accordance with YouTube series policy.
Does Michael think you did it?
No, I'm sure he doesn't.
Did you ever ask him about that?
Well, it's not exactly the type of thing that you sit down with a 12-year-old boy and have a conversation.
No. I mean, did you ever sit down with him and let him air his feelings? I mean, do you know how
Karen,
he feels?
there's no point in trying to make it look like this is my fault.
I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm just saying that maybe you haven't paid enough attention. We fight a lot.
I don't know if you heard it, but Karen says we fight a lot and then laugh, but I think that's an understatement. But there's no payoff. I don't think that there's really anything that they come to an agreement with sometimes in these fights that they have. So, and again, this is in accordance with YouTube series policy.
I don't mean in a bad way. I mean, healthy way.
I don't see the point of all this.
If there are feelings we haven't expressed, we have to express them.
Okay, then let's express them, but let's express them to each other. I don't think we have to bring a doctor into all this.
You agreed to come here because you wanted to help Michael.
I don't have any problem talking to Michael.
No, only listening to him.
Wait a minute, please. Let me ask you both. Do you really want to be here?
No.
Yes.
Maybe you ought to go home and think about it. I can't help unless you want my help.
So there again, Karen wants to help. However, Sid wants to deal with it at home. He just wants to sweep it under the rug in order to not have it known to the outside world about what's really going on inside the home. And that's really old school thinking, because heck, what family wants all their dirty laundry thrown out there? But, there are times when you have to say, hey, we need help. We need this. I need this. I need that. So we all have to have a little help at some point in our lives. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Thank you. Michael made such a mess.
Oh, I'll clean it up.
Son, forget it. Come on, come on. Let's go.
I'll be right there.
Karen's cleaning up Michael's mess that he made in the lobby. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
Hey!
Okay, this is the next scene I wanted to play, so I'm kind of glad that this ran into it. So, and again, this is in accordance with, we're back home at the staircase, and this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
Guy, come here. Sir. So what'd you think of Dr. Phillips?
Oh, he was all right. He was kind of quiet, though.
Isn't that something? He sits there like a bump on the log. He gets all the money and we do all the work. Hey, how'd you like to come and work with me at the shop tomorrow?
That'd be great. Will I get to see that new engine?
See it. You're going to be working on it.
Oh, right. That's great, Dad. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Hey, Mom. Dad's going to let me see that engine. That's right.
So, I don't really like this because why would you take a child who is acting up, running around like a crazy man, why would you take him to an auto shop for him to cause problems? So right there, he should have seen the writing on the wall. But that's just my opinion. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. Oh, Karen's showing her fashionable tie. I love it. More Miss Independent. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
You're gonna take him down to the shop, huh?
Yeah, one day there's worth 6 months in Dr. Phillips' office.
That's your solution to the problem.
Oh, sure. You heard him just now, didn't you? He's all excited, all happy.
He was yelling. I hear it all the time. Changing spark plugs, Sid, is not the answer. Why can't you see that?
Karen, are you going to make a big deal?
Yes, I am. And you're not even willing to admit there's a problem.
Sure I am.
No, you're not. Your mind was made up before we even met Dr. Phillips.
I sat there and listened to that guy. Very patient.
So again, you can kind of see the differences between Sid and I wanted to play this part between Sid and Karen fighting and then about their children and how differences of opinions there are within their marriage as opposed to when Karen and Mac fight. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy. Oh, and they're still trying to blame one another. And this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
But I'm not as impressed as you are by a lot of diplomas on the
Why are
wall.
you afraid? That you'll hear something you don't want to hear about Michael? About us?
About us? First it's Michael and it's me, now it's us.
Hey, how am I going to get you to deal with this?
By letting me deal with it in my own way. At least when Michael's with me, you won't have to listen to all this nagging.
That really hurt Karen. That really hurt her. You can tell. So the next scene is that we're at the auto shop. I'm going to skip this part and I'm going to go to when Carl comes over to the fair gate. I think that's a good place. Okay, this is when Carl comes over to the fair gates and explains to them what's going on with Michael. And this is very educational because I think that even if, some parents are afraid to go to doctors about their kids, maybe this can help them, It's not medical professional advice, but hey, we'll see. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Carl.
Okay. Thank you. Carl,
Why don't we sit down?
can I get you some coffee? Oh, no, thank you. I'm fine. Okay, right to the point. I'm certain that Michael is hyperkinetic.
hyperactive. He's a little bit old to be developing symptoms for the first time, and that's why nobody recognized it.
So there again, the doctor said that Michael was a little bit younger for the symptoms to be developing at this time. So that's why nobody noticed it, because he was just all over the place, and it's not just for a normal 12-year-old boy, which is what Sid thought about in the beginning. So again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
Far. What do you know about it?
Well, it's neurological, isn't it? Makes kids overly active, can't sleep, can't stand still.
Mm-hmm. Short attention span, a whole bag of goodies. We don't know what causes it, but we do know it's not psychological, it is physical. So the two of you can stop blaming yourselves on each other. Please.
Okay, but what do we do about it?
I'm going to send you to a specialist. He will tell you your options.
They prescribe stimulants for hyperkinesia, don't they?
Some doctors do.
I don't like the idea of giving a kid drugs.
Neither do I. And neither does the man I'm sending you to. Although I've got to tell you, sometimes...
I think that this doctor, the way that they handle this is very well, because if you think about it, a lot of parents don't want to put their kids on these stimulants for their children, because, I did help a friend of mine watch a boy that she babysat who did have ADHD and who was put on medication, and it made him just space out, zone out. So you don't want them to be zoned out. You want them to be able to get their energy out and to act like children, but you want to be able to control that. So again, there's that balance, like what we talked about before. There's that balance of, okay, what do we do to help our child who needs the help, but also help them stay safe whenever he is not around them. And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
Times when all else fails...
What do we do instead?
Okay, this is as a friend now. I'll let the specialist be the official voice. Most of the time, hyperkinetic kids grow out of it. Until that time, you're dealing with symptoms. Now, changes in diet help.
Well, if you were your boy...
So I just wanted to say that, hyperkinetic kids grow out of it. So sometimes they do, so maybe that's why I was easy to write that out of the storyline in season 3, because technically he grew out of the worst of it. They didn't need to really address it, because right here it's what you have them saying. It's like technically they do grow out of it. So maybe that's it. I don't know. What do you think, co-host in the background? And again, this is in accordance with YouTube's fair use policy.
What do you do? Hyperkinetic kids have a terrific overabundance of energy.
So if you rechannel it...
That's what I try to do. Steer him. Use the energy. Wear him out.
That shouldn't be too hard.
It is very hard. We are talking about burning up an almost inexhaustible supply of energy every day. Athletics, dancing, exercise, whatever burns up energy. Now, Michael can come out of this better tuned and in better shape than most people. But it's hard because he can't do it alone. If he's going to run a couple of miles every afternoon, someone's got to be there with him to make sure he doesn't get distracted.
I'll be there with him.
Great. And who's going to...
Have you ever tried to keep kids who have ADHD focus on something? Oh, good luck. I literally had to sit there with kids and to make them study and make them do what they need to do because their mind was overactive. They wanted to run around. They wanted to get their energy out. It's very difficult. And, when I worked with a group, the intensive foster care program, we had support groups. And I had to keep, 10, 15 kids occupied all at once who were in the community mental health program that were in an intensive foster care program. Whew, that's no small feat. That really is no small feat. You have to be on top of your game. You can't just let them run around. You have to have structure. Or when I did health with vacation Bible school, so hard to keep all those kids interactive and, stay still and keep their focus. It's so difficult. You can't, it's so difficult. And it not only drains you, but it also drains other people around them. So again, I think what Carl is saying here is so true that they need to have like almost like a shift to be with Michael to help keep his mind focused and active and let him burn out all of his energy. So I think that's a really good idea. And again, I think we've gotten to where a lot of kids stay indoors, so are they getting the energy out that they need to get out, or are we just putting screens in front of them and they're not doing it and they're just getting on medication? That's what I'm afraid of that's happening in today's world. No, I consider myself Gen X. I was raised up in the Gen X way. I had to go outside whenever I wasn't recovering from surgery. My parents wanted us outside. We had like a huge backyard that we could play in and had equipment that we could play on, run around, do silly. We had a lot of cousins all the time. So I really was raised in that Generation X, even though technically I'm a Xennial, but I consider myself Gen X. So therefore, I can kind of see the difference between then and now. And in fact, now I think there's not that balance to where kids want to stay inside, they're going to stay inside. So that's just my opinion. And this is an accordance to future fair use policy.
Hold you up after dinner. We're not talking just a couple of laps. We're talking laps followed by swimming, followed by gymnastics, followed by soccer, followed... Hyperkinesia can be very tough on a family.
We're a tough family.
Good.
Yeah, all right. Goodbye.
Are you all right?
Yeah.
So I agree with that, doctor. I agree with him and what he had to say to Karen and said I almost said Karen and Mac, but I stopped myself. Karen and said. So let's go to the next scene. This is the very last thing I'm going to say. I think these scenes are important just to show the differences between the parenting styles of, one parent who wants to do everything that they can do to help and another one who is more of the old school way, wants to keep everything on the side. So again, this is an important institute for fair use policy.
Is he okay?
Yeah, sure, he's great.
Good. We should talk.
Yeah, I know.
Take this.
No.
I'll take it. We didn't handle this one well, did we?
No. We're so busy blaming each other, we forgot to look for the real problem.
I know, and it scared me, Sid. Not just the way Michael was, but the way we were, you and I. Since the day we met, I knew we were an odd couple. Thought the combination would be great for the kids, exposed to different approaches to things, different ways of thinking.
Well, we are a great combination. The kids are terrific, and this hyperkinetic thing, that's not because of us.
Yeah, I know that now. Before Carl told us, I was really scared. I mean, I knew I made mistakes with Diana and Eric, but I'd learned from those mistakes. I thought Michael was our masterpiece. When this thing happened, it really shook me up.
Yeah, scary.
Way down deep, I knew distractions are not. Kids are secure about your love. I guess if the truth be told, I love you so much and I know you so well that I knew you couldn't be responsible.
There's Michelle coming out instead of Karen. I can always tell when her voice changes. There's Michelle and not Karen. Ugh. I wonder if she knows that. I'll have to ask her. Alright, and again, this is in accordance with YouTube series policy.
Couldn't be you, it had to be me.
Now we know it was neither one of us.
You touched me in a terribly vulnerable spot. I thought maybe you were right, you know? Maybe the atmosphere I've created around here is too pressurized, too frenetic. God, I still feel guilty.
Don't. We're gonna solve this thing together. Michael's gonna be just fine. I'm sure of it.
I know. I'm sure of it too.
All right. And that's the last thing. So again, the two different parenting styles will sometimes work and sometimes doesn't work. I think that with this situation, I think that it didn't work, and I think that we've come a long way, but I just think that we need that balance in today's society, and we still need that balance. We still need that balance because, like I said, it's not just with ADHD, it's also with the aspect of autism now, and where we're at with people getting diagnosed now, and what parents think, what their family thinks, or any other type of diagnosis that a child might have. Everyone needs to be on the same page. Otherwise, how is a child going to get the support, love, and care that they need in order to grow up in a healthy environment? And there's that balance right there. And again, I'll have to say it, the fighting with Sid and Karen is way different than the fighting with Sid and Mac. There's not really a good payoff with Sid and Karen. I think with Karen and Mac, there is a good payoff with them. And I think, again, Sid and Karen are fighting opposite sides. They're fighting, one wants to have help from the outside, one doesn't. And they wants to hold it in. But they have to come together. It has to be a compromise. But they just don't know how to do that. Whereas with Karen and Mac, they may be fighting opposite sides, but with Mac, it's more or less because of the law. Whereas he may agree morally with Karen, it's the law aspect for him that he has to pay attention to. So it's like what Emily G. Baker says, it's morality versus legality. So what's the legality of it versus what's the morality of it all? So I think that that's where the fights between the two different couples, where there is a difference because they're fighting against, a lot of times they're fighting against what they think is right and what the law thinks is right, whereas Sid and Karen is fighting against what one person thinks is right and what another person thinks is right, and that doesn't come together. With Karen and Mac, it always seems to come together in the end, no matter what. And then they always make up at the end, but we don't really see that with Sid and Karen. I really don't get that payoff with them that I do with Karen and Mac, or with Karen. Yeah, I really don't get that payoff like I do with Karen and Mac, like I do with Karen and Mac. Sorry, my brain is just like, whoa. So, anyways, so that is episode 7 and 8, and we have 10 more episodes of season 2 to get through, and then there's a lot more episodes in season 3, so I haven't decided if I'm going to do 3 episodes at a time for season 3, or if I'm going to just do 2, just so that we can get to season 4 quicker. So what do you think about when I said co-host in the background? Does it sound okay? Was it pinpointing it? Everything okay? Like, what are your thoughts? Sorry. Okay. Any final thoughts? Oh, thank you. So so like I said, this episode, it seems like every 2 episodes is getting a little bit more, it's getting more in depth, and I think the storylines are becoming a lot more cohesive, and I think we're gonna start um seeing the more serialized version of knotslanding and where it's gonna go moving into season at the end of the second half of season 2 into season 3 and into 4. So I think that will be real good. Um, I don't know. I'm kind of waiting for the. Oh wow! I'm just kind of waiting to get to season 4. So, oh, that cat, nobody really got me on my arm today. Alrighty. Well, that's that's it for me for today. So don't forget to do the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, turn on the bell notification, subscribe. Just subscribe, like, comment, share, turn on the bell notification. I know. I'm looking at my arm. I'm like, he really got me today. I got like a big old scratch there. Hopefully it'll just go down, but we'll see. Um, And it was just fine before I went live. It's like whenever I go live or whenever I get on the phone, it's like, what? So, again, like, share, subscribe, turn on the bell notification. Also, in the comments, in the description box down below, there's a link for the We're Not Done Yet podcast and the CV Circle channel. And again, maybe I'll have to put a screenshot of what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode. I was really excited. Um, so Miss Moon is aware of this podcast. I don't think she's gonna watch it, but she knows that I am doing reviews and that I am going live, but no, and that I am linking their episodes whenever they release a new one. So that's exciting. Um, so I'll just continue to let them know, and we'll just keep it moving. So go check out their podcast, give them a like, give them a share, follow them on Instagram. Oh, I can be followed on Instagram at Amanda Ruth MC. My Facebook is not public, but for some certain reasons, but my Insta is public. So I look forward and leave comments in the comment section down below. I would love to interact with y'all. Alright, you guys, have a good night, and I will probably see you guys tomorrow. Vicky and Michael live tomorrow on Sunday, just to try to get out season 2 done quicker, just to get them done. So, thank you guys for joining. Replay crew, love you. Please leave a comment, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.